The first time I realized my neighborhood was being held hostage by a clipboard, I was standing ankle-deep in rainwater, watching a Lexus drift down the street like a plastic toy. And the woman screaming at it from her porch, barefoot, mascara running down her cheeks, was the same woman who told me 3 weeks earlier that storm drains were ugly. Yeah, that's the moment I knew I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. And I wasn't the problem. I had warned them. I had begged them. I had documented everything like my life depended on it. And still, they let her do it. They let her seal the drains. Now the water was taking every car on the block. And she was finally seeing what happens when you try to boss nature around like it's a neighborhood Facebook group. I moved to a place called Willow Crest Drive for one reason: peace. That's it. After 22 years working civil infrastructure projects, half of that time in muddy boots and the other half behind conference room blueprints, I wasn't looking for conflict. I was looking for quiet mornings, a dog barking somewhere in the distance, maybe a few neighborly waves. I'd lost my wife 2 years earlier. That kind of grief rewires you. You stop caring about ambition, politics, status. You start caring about whether the sun feels warm again, whether you can breathe without your chest feeling like concrete. Willow Crest was supposed to be that kind of place. Picture perfect. Clean sidewalks, neatly cut lawns, little flags by mailboxes, families jogging with strollers, retirees watering roses. The kind of street where everything looks harmless, almost staged. My house was a modest 2-story with cedar shingles and a backyard that sloped gently down toward a patch of trees. It wasn't fancy, but it was solid, and that's what I needed. Something dependable. Something that didn't ask me for more than I could give. But on day 4, after a light drizzle, I noticed something that made my stomach twist. At the corner near my driveway, there was a storm drain. Except it wasn't really a storm drain anymore. Someone had bolted a thick plastic plate over it, sealed it tight, like they were trying to hide it. Leaves and sediment were piled up behind it, water pooling where it should have been flowing through. I walked across the street. Same thing. I walked farther down the block. Same thing again. In total, I counted 9 drains within eyesight, and at least 7 were sealed or partially blocked with mesh, sandbags, even decorative stones. And right away, I knew this wasn't an accident. You don't accidentally cover storm drains. So the next morning, I called the HOA contact from the welcome packet. A woman answered, voice clipped like she'd been waiting all day to correct somebody. "This is Marla," she said, like the name itself was a warning. I introduced myself, friendly, careful. I asked about the storm drains. There was a pause, then this little sigh that sounded like she was annoyed I'd even noticed. "Oh, those," she said. "Yes, we had them sealed. For aesthetic purposes." I blinked. Aesthetic purposes? "They were collecting debris," she said, like she was explaining something to a toddler. "Leaves, mud, trash. Residents complained it looked messy." I tried to keep my tone calm. "Ma'am, those drains are part of city infrastructure. They're designed to collect that debris. If you seal them, water has nowhere to go. That creates standing water. Flood risk." Her voice sharpened. "We've had complaints about mosquitoes and puddles." "Puddles happen because the drains are blocked," I said. Another pause. Then she hit me with the line that told me everything I needed to know. "If you don't like our policies, you're welcome to attend a board meeting. But I strongly advise you not to tamper with any HOA-managed features." Click. I stood in my kitchen holding my phone like it had insulted me. HOA-managed features. Like a storm drain was a garden gnome. That week, I went to their monthly meeting at the community clubhouse. Marla sat at the front, perfectly pressed blazer, hair sprayed like armor. 3 board members beside her, all nodding along like a jury that had already decided your guilt. When they opened the floor, I raised my hand and stood. I explained calmly what I'd seen. I offered to show maps, runoff patterns, municipal codes. I even offered to clean the drains myself. They smiled. They nodded. And then Marla looked down at her paperwork and said, "We actually have a motion to address your behavior." My stomach dropped. "My behavior?" She read it out loud. "Unauthorized interference with HOA landscaping measures. Fine, $100. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was insane. "I haven't touched anything," I said. Marla didn't even look up. "You've been seen near the drains." Residents reported it. The board voted. Unanimous. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't ignorance. This was power. The kind of small, petty power that makes bored people feel important. The next day, Marla showed up at my driveway in person. I was in the garage organizing tools when I heard heels clicking across pavement, steady and deliberate. She walked up like she owned the concrete. Mid-40s, platinum hair, oversized sunglasses, bright coral blazer, clipboard tucked under her arm like it was a weapon. "Good morning," she said, too sweet. "Morning," I replied. "I wanted to welcome you properly," she said, holding out a packet. "Updated compliance guidelines. We like to make sure all new homeowners understand our standards." I flipped through it. 10 pages of nonsense. Visual harmony requirements, landscape continuity zones, and my favorite, discouragement of unapproved commentary. I looked up at her. "Did the whole community vote on these?" She smiled tight. "The board is elected to make decisions for the community, even decisions that violate city drainage laws." I asked. Her jaw tightened. "We have a beautification initiative. A storm drain isn't a decoration," I said. Marla leaned closer. "Mr. Ethan," I said. "Ethan Carter." "Mr. Carter," she said slowly. "Continued antagonism could be considered disruptive under Section 6C. I stared at her. "Disruptive? For pointing out flood risk." She pivoted instantly. "Also, your trash bins were visible from the sidewalk this morning. They should be stored within 30 minutes of pickup." I almost laughed again. This woman could talk about trash bins with more passion than public safety. That weekend, the forecast called for a heavy storm. Not apocalyptic, but significant. I walked the block again, counting drains. 10 in total. 8 sealed. 2 barely open, and both near my side of the street. I emailed the HOA, this time formally. I cited municipal code. I attached photos. I copied the city public works department. An hour later, I got an automated reply. "Thank you for your concern. The board has reviewed this matter and considers it resolved." No name. No signature. Just a corporate shrug. Then the fines started piling up. 2 days later, I got a notice in my mailbox. $150 for unauthorized activity near HOA infrastructure. No details, no proof, no timestamp. I appealed. I printed my documentation. I delivered it to their Dropbox. And after that, little things started happening. My mailbox was bent open. Mulch dumped on my driveway. A neighbor I barely knew stopped waving. Marla didn't have to scream. She had followers, and she was using them. So I installed cameras. 2 at first, then 4. And I started building a file. Photos, dates, maps, rainfall estimates. Everything organized like a case file. Because here's the thing. When you spend your life designing infrastructure, you learn to respect water. Water doesn't care about your HOA. It doesn't care about your bylaws. It doesn't care about Marla's coral blazer. Water follows physics. And physics always wins. The real turning point came one night around midnight. I woke up to a metallic clinking sound, like tools scraping concrete. Rain had been falling steady for hours. Not heavy yet, but enough to soften everything. I looked out through the blinds and saw 2 figures crouched by the drain near my property. One was tightening bolts. The other held a flashlight. The flashlight swung up just enough for me to see her face. Marla. No blazer this time. Just a windbreaker with the HOA logo and that same stiff posture like she was born to tell people their fence was the wrong color. I threw on boots and stepped outside. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I called. She jumped like she'd been caught stealing. The guy with her, some contractor, froze mid-bolt. "This is a routine maintenance operation," Marla snapped. "At midnight." I said. "On a storm drain? On a city easement? You have no authority to seal that." She stepped toward me, eyes sharp. "You are not authorized to interfere." "I'm not interfering," I said, pulling out my phone. "I'm documenting." Her face changed. The confidence cracked for half a second. "You record me," she hissed, "and you're going to regret it." I smiled. "That's funny, because if you seal that drain, the entire block is going to regret it." The contractor muttered, "Maybe we should stop." Marla whipped her head toward him. "Finish it." I raised my phone higher. "Say that again." She froze. Then she snapped. "We're leaving." They walked away, dragging their toolbox through the rain like defeated soldiers. I crouched at the drain. They'd started the bolts, but hadn't tightened them. I removed the plate. Water flowed through again, soft, steady. But I already knew. They'd come back. 2 days later, a certified letter arrived. $250 for intimidation of board personnel. That's when I stopped trying to be polite. I sent my full report to the city. I contacted the county. I even sent the footage to a local investigative journalist page. And guess what? Nothing. Review in 14 business days. Public Works told me. 14 days. The storm was coming in 48 hours. That night, the Weather Service issued a revised alert. A tropical system had shifted. The language was calm, but the meaning wasn't. Significant rainfall expected. Urban flooding likely in poorly drained areas. Poorly drained. That was us. I went door to door the next afternoon. I warned my neighbors. Some listened. Some shrugged. One mom, quiet lady with 2 kids, said, "Marla said it's fine. She says the drains are managed." I stared at her. "Move your car up the driveway," I said. "Anything valuable in the garage, lift it." She hesitated. "Do you really think it'll be that bad?" I didn't sugarcoat it. "I don't think. I know." The rain started that night. Light at first, then heavier. By noon the next day, the sky went that sick green-gray color that makes your instincts scream. At 3 in the afternoon, the street was already pooling. At 5, the water hit the sidewalks. At 6:15, it reached knee level on the low end of the block. Cars started floating. At first, it was subtle. Tires lifting. Vehicles rocking. Then one sedan drifted sideways like it was being pulled by invisible hands. Alarms went off. People screamed. And down near the corner, Marla's Lexus started moving. She ran out barefoot in a bathrobe, hair plastered to her skull, shouting like she could command the water. "My car," she screamed. I splashed through the flood toward her. "Forget the car," I yelled. "You fall in this, you're done." She looked at me with pure rage, like I'd personally caused the storm. And then another car, an old Buick, slammed into the curb with a groan, sending a wave through the street. Marla froze. For the first time, she didn't have an answer. The water kept rising. The current wasn't violent, but it was relentless. She stumbled back onto her porch, sobbing, and I walked away. That night, the block looked like a war zone. Debris floating, trash cans bobbing like buoys. A kayak drifting down the street with 2 teenagers paddling using a rake like it was a joke. By morning, 14 cars were visibly damaged. Some wedged into yards. Some stacked. One lodged against a porch railing like a shipwreck. The drains were still sealed. But now nobody could deny it. At 2:30 that afternoon, the city finally showed up. Orange vests. Crowbars. Drills. They yanked off plates, cut through plastic barriers, drained the streets. And with every plate they removed, you could almost hear Marla's authority cracking. That evening, a city inspector in a navy suit walked up to Marla's door with a file folder. And for once, Marla didn't look powerful. She looked terrified. Neighbors started gathering in my yard, not to accuse me, but to ask for copies of my documentation. They wanted to file together. They wanted answers. A week earlier, they barely waved. Now they were ready to burn the whole system down. Marla stood alone on her porch, watching everyone come to me. And that's when she snapped. 2 days later, early morning, she walked out in the same mud-streaked robe and started screaming at the street like it owed her an apology. "This isn't my fault," she yelled. "I protected this neighborhood. I kept it beautiful. And now you're all turning on me." Nobody answered. Then she pointed at me. "And you," she screamed. "You wanted this. You poisoned everyone against me with your paranoia. You orchestrated this flood." I stood up slowly. "I warned you," I said. "I gave you every chance to do the right thing." She laughed, jagged and bitter. "You think the city cares? They don't. They'll bury this like they bury everything." And here's the part that still gives me chills. Right on cue, an unmarked county vehicle rolled up. 2 officials stepped out, calm as surgeons, carrying paperwork. One introduced himself. "County Flood Compliance Division." Marla went pale. The woman with him opened a folder and read out loud. "Tampering with public infrastructure. Obstruction of stormwater pathways. Personal liability pending investigation." Marla's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The man looked her dead in the eye. "The HOA does not have jurisdiction over city-managed drainage systems. And based on video evidence provided by multiple residents, you personally oversaw the obstruction." Marla trembled. "I was acting in the community's best interest." He didn't blink. "You'll have the chance to explain during the investigation. For now, you'll sign this notice of inquiry and surrender all HOA documentation from the past 12 months. Her hand shook as she signed. And when they left, she didn't scream again. She just stood there small and wet, like a puppet whose strings had been cut. The neighborhood changed after that. People started helping each other, actually talking face to face, not hiding behind HOA notices. Cleanup crews formed. People shared tools, shared food, shared rides for neighbors whose cars were totaled. And the strangest part, nobody even said the words HOA anymore. It was like we all collectively agreed. That chapter was over. But here's the thing. Marla didn't get arrested that day. She didn't get dragged away. She didn't get publicly shamed on national television. She just disappeared from meetings. Her house went dark. A for sale sign appeared weeks later. And I'll be honest, that ending doesn't sit right with me. Because some people in the neighborhood said, "Good, let her leave, let it end peacefully." But others said, "No. She destroyed property. She endangered lives. She should be held accountable." And that's the question I want to leave you with. When someone abuses power, even small suburban power, and it causes real harm, what should justice look like? Should it be punishment, restitution, forgiveness? Or is walking away the biggest consequence of all? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I promise you, people are going to disagree. And if you've ever witnessed an HOA bully, a power-tripping neighbor, or someone who thought rules mattered more than people, tell your story too. Like the video if you want more real-life stories told like this, subscribe for the next one, and remember, water doesn't care who you are, but it always finds the truth.